Hi everyone, I'm Danielle Hunt. I'm the Chief Executive here at Pharmacist Support, and I'd like to welcome you to our final instalment of our Act Now weekly wellbeing chats. These panel chats have been part of our Act Now campaign and have been running for 5 weeks since we launched a campaign on the 25th of September, which was World Pharmacist Day. Each week of the campaign, we've been focused on one of the 5 ways to wellbeing, and these sessions bring an evidence-based element to each of the wellbeing themes. We aim to bust myths, share examples of wellbeing in action, and provide a little bit of a taster of some of the tools that can support many with their mental health. Each week, we'll be chatting to our resident Pharmacist Support wellbeing expert, Melissa Cochrane, who'll provide a science-based look at each of the wellbeing themes and why they work. Plus, we'll be inviting along some very special guests who'll share their own experiences with both mental health and wellbeing. So this week's theme is Connect. An activity around this theme has been made possible thanks to the support of our Act Now sponsor, Day Lewis. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce this week's panel. So Rupa Patel is an executive director at Day Lewis PLC, a family-run business for over 40 years with 280 pharmacies nationwide. Rupa runs a business alongside her 2 brothers, Jay and Sam, and has a strong passion for values, culture, and people within the organisation. Together, they made a commitment to focus on the future of the local community, which has led them to be founding partners of Pearly Way Forum, founding patrons of Legacy Youth Zone, and also they fundraise for many local charities. So hi, Rupa, welcome.
Hi, Danielle. That was a very nice introduction. Thank you.
You're very welcome, and thanks for joining us. So our next panel member is Ali Spark. So Ali is Director of Happiness and Technology at the Health Dispensary, an independent pharmacy and wellness clinic in South Wales. So welcome, Ali.
Thank you. Brought a few friends with me for the support.
It's great to see. And finally, last but not least, Melissa Cochrane. So as I mentioned, Melissa is the charity's resident wellbeing expert. And Melissa has an extensive background in psychotherapy, counselling and wellbeing. And she joined our charity early in the year to help us develop our wellbeing services. So welcome to you all. Thanks again for joining us. This week's theme is all about the importance of connection. And we're connecting with others right now. So I'd like to come straight to you, Melissa, to tell us a little bit about the science behind this. So can you tell us a little bit about why social connection are linked with long-term resilience and are good for our well-being? Can you explain a little bit more about that for us?
Yeah, and I think it's important to start by understanding how a lack of connection can impact individuals, and then that helps us to understand what connection can do for us. So human beings have evolved throughout history as social creatures. And what we know is that when people are lonely or perceive themselves as being rejected by the group, they respond as if there were a physical stressor in the body. And this induces a stress state. So the brain reacts as if we're in danger. And I find it really interesting. Dr. Rangan Chatterjee, in his book, The Stress Solution, states that high social stress is an even bigger risk factor for dying from a chronic disease than physical inactivity, alcohol intake, and smoking put together. And I find that really shocking, really interesting. So, I suppose if we go back to looking at humans' evolutionary history, it makes more sense because it would have been really dangerous for a person to be separated from their tribe or group until very recently. It's only, in fact, very recently that you could survive in your house by just getting food deliveries and paying your bills online, and you can really survive kind of on your own now. But throughout human history, that wouldn't be possible, and it would be really dangerous. It would leave a person vulnerable to predators, at risk of experiencing a lack of food and shelter. And because this would have been such a threat to a person's existence, you can see why feeling lonely, isolated, or socially rejected can actually trigger a physical stress response in the body. So a large part of well-being is having good relationships. And it can be helpful for us to focus on nurturing our relationships just as we focus on making sure we get enough exercise and we eat food that's healthy for us. So a lot of us know that we need to exercise in order to be healthy. We know that we should eat more fruit and vegetables, less processed food, but we might not think about nurturing our relationships in the same way. But it's very, very important for our physical and mental health that we do. So when you look at how we tend to focus on relationships in these days, it's interesting to note that social media can actually increase our feelings of loneliness. And this is especially if it seems like everyone else has more friends than we do, or is doing more exciting things. And unfortunately, you know, people put out these really curated images on social media. They tend to put out things that they want to celebrate. You don't put out on social media that you just had a really difficult client interaction and you're feeling really low. Like, most people don't put that stuff on, and it can leave us feeling bad. Being able to be with friends online has been a lifeline during the pandemic. So it's not about shunning social media altogether, but rather being aware of the effect it's having on you and finding ways to genuinely connect with other people. So social media, we need to be careful not to let it replace our real connections with people, because those face-to-face and eye-to-eye interactions are what really feed us and nurture us. So it allows us to be honest with ourselves. It allows us to be honest with each other. To see ourselves reflected back by someone else is really important. And to have conversations about how our lives are really going. So I think emphasizing those real connections is the most important.
I know that's really interesting, because we've probably all felt a little bit isolated in the past 18 months and probably use social media even more to feel connected. And I definitely feel at a point now where I think you do take a step back, you rely on social media a little bit more. And even just thinking about myself, I'm probably not connected with as many family and friends in the last 18 months. And it's easy to fall into that habit, isn't it? What steps would you recommend to kind of, if we want to increase connection in our lives and improve that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think we need to make time for device-free, face-to-face and eye-to-eye interactions. Now, when I say device-free, that doesn't mean it has to be in person. We know that we went through a time where we couldn't meet with people in person, but if we were to meet online like this, it's about making sure that your phone is somewhere else so that you can't see it. You're not being pulled out of your interaction with somebody else by notifications or texts or whatever else. In an article in which he looks at the research around the use of mobile phones, a man called Tim Elmore discusses that there's research showing that just having a mobile phone nearby can decrease intellectual acuity, and it can also decrease feelings of interpersonal closeness and trust, as well as reducing feelings of empathy and understanding. This has probably happened to most of us. You go out for a coffee with a friend, or you're having lunch and they've got their phone on the table and it keeps buzzing, and they're looking at it and they're saying, oh, hang on just a second, I need to reply to this one. You don't feel really valued in that moment by that person. It can be really distracting and undermine that feeling of closeness. So I think finding ways to get rid of those phones for a while, actually have them out of your line of vision and quiet, can be really important. And then there's building connection in the workplace, and, you know, allowing as much as is possible, and I know these are really, really challenging times, but as much as possible, allowing some time for colleagues to connect with each other around things that don't have to do with work can help to create that sense of community. We know that colleagues are can be really important for our feelings of connection and mental health.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Melissa. Really interesting. Well, Rupa, I'd love to hear from you about your experiences with connection in relation to wellbeing and how it's helped you personally.
Melissa's so true in terms of, I always think that connection and relationships are something that we were born to do, like touch and smile and looking at someone in the eye. And I think the biggest thing I found certainly in the last year and a half, has been not to see someone else smile and not being able to just really see if someone's feeling okay or sad. And if you're hard of hearing, it's impossible to hear through the mask. So I think there's a lot that's been missed as well. So actually I'm a fan of connecting with some people virtually through a screen, because you can take those masks off and at least you can see someone's face and see someone smile, and that actually holds a lot of weight for me. So that's been one way I have connected, is through I had a birthday party last year in the middle of lockdown, but I did it on Zoom. So I had lots of my friends and family, and it was New Year's Eve, and we were all isolating in our own homes, but all being together, and it felt really happy. And I still have people now saying what a great New Year's Eve they had, because they felt that they were all together. We were all in our own living rooms, dancing around on our own like lunatics. I think new in my life. And something else I found, I've got 2 young kids. I've got a 4-year-old and a 3-year-old, and at the beginning of lockdown, it was so tough because I wasn't used to trying to work and having them in your space and trying to find boundaries. And so I something pinged up on my social media about a positive parenting class. And one of the big things they talk about is mind, body and soul time. So just finding 10 minutes with your child and switching off the phone, and it's dedicated 10 minutes to whatever they want to do, but you're like there purely with them. And it's amazing actually. And you think, oh, how am I going to find 10 minutes? But we waste so much other time on things like social media, and you don't need to. So I think to do things that are important to you, to find those time for connections, you can find that time even in the day and kind of lives that we live, which are incredibly busy and pressured, even if it's just 10 minutes. And so I do a lot of that with my work colleagues as well. I just find 10 minutes to connect and to speak to people and just ask, hey, how are you doing? And it's amazing how much you can, you feel like you've done so much even just from listening. And sometimes I've not said a word, but if you just listen and then come back to me and say, oh my goodness, amazing, I've got to share with you, and thinking, well, I didn't actually say anything. I was itching to give advice, but I've just learned to step back and just to listen. And that's been really helpful. So there's some tips from me.
Definitely. And I think, like you say, kind of that link to colleagues has just been so important. And so many people's talked about just their teams and just being able to connect. And actually, Zoom and Teams have been really good, because you can at least see each other. Even if you can't see each other face to face, you can see that smile. You can even see if someone's not feeling great. I'm just thinking about from Day Lewis's perspective, is there anything you've introduced there to stimulate and support your pharmacy teams to connect with one another?
Zoom's been really helpful, we use Teams for our pharmacists and pharmacy teams, because pharmacy can be quite an isolated health profession where you don't often get to meet other pharmacists like day to day, but actually been able to set up focus groups and meetings, and I host some one-to-ones with my pharmacy teams too. And quite often when I'm struggling, if I'm really trying to tackle a problem, maybe it might be around stress in the workplace, I'll pick up the phone and speak to some of our pharmacists and just ask them, how are you feeling? What can actually we do to make things better for you and for the teams? We've always had a core value about having fun. And often people say, oh, how can you have fun? It's pharmacy, it's got to be professional. And actually, we've been doing this for years, but actually I realise now more than ever, when you do have fun, you foster a sense of connection, a sense of purpose. Some of you might have been there. We did, got 1,000 colleagues dancing to Baby Shark like 2 years ago. And everyone's like, well, are you crazy? And I was actually, no, but after that, people really felt like it was fun. You're together, you had someone next to you. And even if it's, going for Christmas dinner or something fun for Halloween, whatever it is, I think there's an element, if pharmacy teams can find a small way to introduce some fun, even if it's forced, I think that's really powerful in laughing together as a team.
And I know it's been really difficult in the pandemic, and we all know, thinking about wellbeing, we need to take breaks and we need to do things, but people's just felt unable, really, haven't they? But we know it's important. So why do you feel it's important, particularly in that work setting, that we make time to connect with others and the teams?
Certainly in community pharmacy, our pharmacists are so good at doing this with the patients. We do that every day. It's the power of every day. Every single interaction, conversation is impacting a patient's life. But sometimes I think pharmacists and community pharmacists don't take that time for themselves. And I think it's that connecting with each other is a real source of growth and development. One of my pharmacists has a massive needle phobia, and 2 years ago just couldn't do any vaccinations, and was really scared. And so we coached her through it. And actually I connected her with another pharmacist who's brilliant at services and just loved it. And that one connection she's created a mentor, and they speak. And this year she's done over 1,000 flu vaccines. I mean, that's unbelievable. And I think that's just because that wasn't because of a course she's been on, or, you know, it was because someone actually coached her and connected with her and helped her through that. So I think, you know, pharmacists, definitely, there's a huge value in connecting with other professionals.
Definitely. And I mean, coming to you, Ali, we've had a discussion like this before, and I think it was about 6 months ago we were talking about how teams are working together, and it's great to catch up with you again. And I know that team is really important to you, and I know that last year you and your pharmacy team were working with a team at Cardiff University on some of the prescribing happiness research. So could you just tell us a little bit about that?
We encourage the use of positive language sort of in the pharmacy. I think that is sort of so important. You know, it's all too easy sometimes to become very negative, especially when things seem very dark around you. So encourage the use of positive language. You know, I'm always saying, if somebody sort of says, oh, you know, something's gone wrong, blah, 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 I'll just sort of say, right, 3 positive things. What have you learned? 3 positive things. I'm a great fan of 3, actually, because I tend to do that with myself as well, in terms of if I'm feeling overwhelmed and thinking, oh, I've got so much to do today. I just think, right, top 3 things, you know, so you're sort of breaking it down into little chunks. Yeah, a lot of the messages of that sort of positive psychology are with us, but I think lots of that was sort of in the brand when we started forming Health Dispensary 2016 anyway. And then my desire in sort of collaborating with Cardiff University really was to see how we could get a model, a thing, an entity that would actually help to make other people's lives happier. So I would probably say, you know, a lot of that research, a lot of that project is still ongoing and will be. But certainly the simple messages of, you know, positive use of language, gratitude, I think, is a huge thing. You know, sometimes if somebody's having a hard day, you know, I'll say, come on, you know, somebody's worse off. The next customer through the door can be worse off, you know. And as Rupa said, you know, pharmacy's got such a huge effect on so many people's lives. And I always like to think, well, even if I can't cure their ailment coming through the door, you can send them out with a little smile. You know, something that just makes that connection, as sort of Melissa was talking about. So yeah, so a lot of the research and the prescribing happiness still ongoing. Watch this space, but it's, I think what I'd like to say is it's sort of not just for show. It's really sort of part of us and what we're about, and you know, what we believe.
And I know that started before the pandemic, and you built some of that into it. But I suppose from that research and your own experience, do you feel that's helped you and your team connect during the pandemic? Yeah,
I think it has, again, because we're sort of building the environment around that. So whilst I know sort of initially, in all honesty, we used to have sort of sessions, mindfulness, you know, get the group together and really due to just the sort of carnage of the last 12-18 months, and let's not sort of gloss over it. You know, it's been really tough, and I wouldn't want to belittle that for any pharmacist watching this. You know, I'm there with you. I know what we've all been through. It's been grueling and a thankless task at times, but nevertheless, you know, it's been important to hold on to the important things around connection. You know, I go in every day and will just sort of say to my staff, you know, I say good morning to them by name. You know, it's that acknowledgement, isn't it, to say, I see you, you know, you're a person. I'm not just going to go in and say good morning everyone. I actually go around everybody and address them by name, and hopefully, you know, that makes people feel a bit more appreciated, I guess. And the other thing, you know, tend to do as well is just little things, but to say, you know, thank you. I know it's difficult, but thank you for your work. Thank you for your effort. It's you know, it's quite sort of difficult times. So, and I think, you know, connection by word, but I think, you know, as Rupa said as well, things like humor are so important. That shared humor of silly things that you've had happen, you know, a year ago, 18 months ago, 2 years, you know, that shared experience through humor. And another big thing for us as well is music. So I mean, like I love music. You know, I was sort of virtually brought up singing and playing piano and so on. So we tend to play music in work, and we'll break into song, and and that is such sometimes a stress reliever. It's, as I say, it does just come down to those little human connections, keeping them going, trying to keep that little spark of it. I think if you work and you've got the passion for pharmacy, if you've got a knowledge of bringing your authentic self to work, that's the bit I think that can get you through it, because, as I say, it is making those little connections then with your colleagues, with the people through the door, and at the end of the day, it's that meaning, that purpose, that why, isn't it? Keep us going, not getting through 1,000 prescriptions or however many you do in a day. It's just remembering the why of why we're there, and that's certainly the thing that sort of kept me going.
Yeah, and I think you make a really important point there, Ali, about we can't underestimate how hard it's been. And it's easy to kind of talk about well-being and say, well, just take a break and just do these things. But actually, practically, when you're facing really difficult times every day, it can feel difficult. And you talked about a few kind of small things, and I suppose it is small things that you can build in quite easily every day. And I suppose for anybody listening, have you got any tips on how you kind of build in these small things into everyday activity, recognizing, it is difficult and it is really busy and people are feeling tired, but what would you recommend? Like, what small tips have you built in to help your whole team?
Yeah, little things, I say, like music, if you can have it on, pay for a license, it's not that much. That has been the biggest thing, and I know with the sort of new pharmacy branch that we opened just before COVID, they were just delighted to have some sort of music in the background. Access to fresh air, opening the doors, opening the windows. Other things we sort of like having plants in our environments. We've got quite a lot of plants dotted around the place, just again to, I guess, it's that little sort of connection with nature and where we come from as well, and just that sense of greenery as well. It's pleasant, it's inspiring. I suppose it's trying to connect with all those other senses, isn't it? Hearing through music, that sight of greenery, of a sort of more pleasant environment. Smells, we put diffusers on as well with essential oils. But I think it's been a matter of getting through, and I think the thing that, again, is supportive is sort of learning the lessons and thinking, well, the resilience that I've built now, how is that going to look in a year's time? When I look back, I'm incredibly proud of the effort I've made, my team has made, my community of pharmacists has made, incredibly proud. And let's not forget that, because again, in the end, 6 months, a year's time, that will make it meaningful, and that will almost make the experience worth going through. So I think it's almost having the presence of mind in the times we're in now, that it is just a time and it will pass. And how we reflect on it and how we've behaved, people will remember, and we will remember. And hopefully in some small way, as I say, we'll look back and then not as a good time, and I don't ever want to go through it again, and I'm sure nobody watching or listening to this would want to go through it again. But let's learn some good lessons from it, and let's improve ourselves and sort of come out stronger, I guess.
I think the word reflection there is really important, because it has been a difficult time, and thank you to both you, Ali and Rupa, for sharing your experiences. I suppose, Melissa, just listen to those experiences. Do you have any thoughts on that, particularly around kind of transition and moving forward and reflection? Because I think lots of people are in a similar position where kind of they were just powering through, and now there's that time for reflection. It's becoming even more difficult because we're kind of recognizing. I mean, what's your thoughts on that, Melissa?
Reflection comes when you've got the time and the space to do it. And, it's really hard when you're flat out to reflect on anything because you're in survival mode. So I think as things ease off and people have a bit more time, I think reflection is going to come a little bit more naturally. I think it's very hard to force reflection. So it may be that as we come out of the pandemic, I mean, I'm aware right now we're heading into winter, so I'm not sure when this is going to happen, but if what we can do is try to create some space for reflection, that can be really good. And I think collective reflection can be really helpful as well. We're talking about connection in this chat. So if we can find times to come together as a team and just say, right, what have the last 18 months been like for us all? Let's talk about it. What have we learned? What has hurt? What has been amazing? You know, just put some time together to connect around what we've all been through. I think that can help to start the reflection process going. And I think that that's really important. I also really liked what Ali said in terms of connection. She kind of moved it along a little bit from just connecting to other people, but to connecting with nature as well, and to music. And connection can mean so many things. And I really like what you said, Ali, about having sort of plants around to enhance that connection with nature. I think there's some really interesting research about aromatherapy. So I was interested to hear what you said about using essential oils and diffusers, and because they can actually trigger in us an experience that is similar to being in nature. I think finding ways to connect in other ways is important too, like with nature, with music. And I think it's great that Ali's doing that. I'm sure other places are as well, but that's something that workplaces can do to help enhance connection and well-being too.
Definitely. And I think a part of connection is sharing stories and learning as well. And I think I'd really like to thank you both for sharing that today, because I think people can connect to that and it starts that conversation. And that's very much what we're trying to do at the charity, and particularly through this campaign. We know the power of sharing kind of experience. And I know when we ran the campaign last year, one person said just the whole campaign helped them feel less alone, just through listening to other people's stories and chats like this. So we really do appreciate you taking the time. I'm afraid that's all we've got time for today. I could talk to you, all three of you, all day, but that's all we've got time for. We are coming towards the end of our campaign, but there is still time to sign up for the Act Now campaign. So then you can see some of the other chats we've had over the past 5 weeks, which have all interlinked across the 5 ways to wellbeing. If you've not already, please check out our Wardley Wellbeing Hub, because on there you'll find our brand new wellbeing learning platform. So here, as an individual, you can find out a little bit more about some of the things we've talked about today. And there's lots of great resources on there. We also have resources around how to build positive workplace relationships and improve social skills and connection, because we know that's an important part of this topic. So I really hope you've enjoyed kind of the science-based wellbeing discussions we've had over the past few weeks. And I really hope it's inspired you to act now, which is what the campaign's all about. And that's to allow time for wellbeing, to consider the needs of your colleagues, and most importantly, to take action. So take care, everyone, and we really hope to connect with you again soon. Thank you.